Hello, I'm Matt, and I'd like to welcome you to the channel. If this is your first visit to our channel, please like, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you will know when we upload a new video. In my book, Deciding for Life, How I Lost 70 Pounds Without Working Out and While Still Eating Foods That I Love, I describe French toast made from several different kinds of breads, as well as even some pies. We've used chocolate babka, cinnamon raisin bread, cinnamon potato bread, and even cherry pies. Then I started making my own whole wheat homemade bread. I've really gotten to where I like my whole wheat bread, so I thought I might try making some cinnamon bread, because I've never seen cinnamon bread made with whole wheat. And there may be a good reason for that, but I'm going to give it a try. And I'm going to give it a little twist because I'm going to twist it kind of like a babka. And the bread that you're going to see is a recipe that I got from John Kirkwood that I've modified for my own purposes. And I've put a link to John Kirkwood's No Knead Whole Wheat Bread in the description below. And for the technique of adding the cinnamon and using an egg wash, these two techniques came from Brian Langersom's YouTube video on making a cinnamon raisin babka, which is also linked in the description below. 2 teaspoons of instant yeast, and a teaspoon of sugar in 104 Fahrenheit water. Mix it up with a spatula and let it sit aside to bloom. 600 grams of whole wheat flour, we must be accurate, 2 teaspoons of Mediterranean pink salt. Yeah, I know they're big rocks, but I happen to like the salty bite. And mix it up a little bit with the stand mixer. 2 tablespoons of butter, melted nicely in the microwave. About 30 seconds is all it takes with my microwave. Yours may be a little different. Time to add the liquid ingredients. And as you can see, that had a good bloom. I like to mix it a little bit with just the water and yeast and sugar before I add the butter, with a little prep work with the spatula. Time to add the butter. Scraping the sides with the spatula again. I've found that this makes the mix come together a little bit easier. Now I mix on low speed until the bread comes together in a nice smooth ball and cleans off the sides of the bowl, which is really what I'm looking for here. Now I heat up my oven for 30 seconds at 350 just to warm it up a tad, as this is where I'm going to proof my bread. It's something I read in a post somewhere. I wish I could remember to give the person credit, but I like how it works out. Now in the oven for 45 minutes for the first proof. Time to make the brown sugar and cinnamon mix. Brian's recipe called for 100 grams of brown sugar and 10 grams of cinnamon. I doubled it because I am not putting raisins in my bread. In the end, I probably should have went with 150 grams and 15 grams because it really came out to be a little bit too much brown sugar and cinnamon. But I still think it's going to taste awesome. And cinnamon really is awesome. I did say something earlier about being precise, didn't I? Time to break up the brown sugar. And by the way, this is light brown sugar if you're wondering. Time for a little shaky shake. And I gotta break up a little bit more brown sugar. I gotta have it relatively smooth. Then I put a lid on it and put it to the side until I'm ready to use it. After 45 minutes, it's time for the second mix. Or I guess they call this working the dough. But I'm not a chef, so I call it mixing the dough. And I don't really do anything special here. I just put it back on the mixer, put the dough hook on it, and mix it up again until it cleans the sides of the bowl off. And no, I don't make it into a fancy ball like most people you see on YouTube. This seems to work just fine the way it is. Then I warm up the oven again, set it 350 for about 30 seconds to give it a nice warm place to rise again, before it gets popped back in the oven. This time for only 30 minutes. Time to add the cinnamon sugar, but first we got to do the egg wash that Brian talked about. It did rise quite nicely. I wet my hands so I can wet the cutting board like John Kirkwood recommends for making this spread. And it seems to work quite well, as I don't have to use any flour. Then I'll wet my hands again to make sure that it doesn't stick to my hands. I'm just going to stretch it out with my hands. And I did pull a tear in it, which was kind of unfortunate, because it leaks later. It leaks cinnamon, which wasn't that great. Time for the egg wash. 1 egg and 2 tablespoons of water. Mixy, and then brush it on. Time for the cinnamon and sugar, the star of the show. This really ends up being way too much cinnamon sugar. But I still bet it's going to taste awesome when I make French toast out of it on my cheat day, Sunday. Time to roll it up. It's actually the first time I've rolled cinnamon dough before. This was kind of fun. I could have done without the tear out, though. But I fix it up pretty decent by just pinching it all back together and pinching as many of the seams together as possible so they don't leak. That makes a pretty little roll. Now I'm going to cut and twist in babka fashion. Way too much cinnamon and sugar. But it sure does look really good. I gotta try to make it pretty. And we can't waste the brown sugar. Now it's time for it to go into a well-buttered, and I mean very well-buttered, pan. With all this sugar, I certainly don't want it to stick. That could be a disaster, but if it did, instead of making French toast, I'd just make French toast casserole. It got kind of a big hole in it, but I rescued it with a scraper. Then I prettied it up in the pan a little bit. Then I figured I'd use up the egg wash, as I hate to waste things. And in the end, it came out pretty cool. And once again, I warmed up the oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for about 30 seconds to give it a nice warm place to go. And then I set the timer for 20 minutes because I have to preheat the oven to 375, and it takes my oven about 10 minutes to heat all the way up. After the 20 minutes, it looks like it's risen up quite well. But it still has 10 more minutes to go on the stove. Time to preheat the oven to 375, which, like I said, takes about 10 minutes with this oven. I did put plastic wrap over the top of the bread because the last time I made this, it stuck to the towel. It didn't come out quite the way I wanted it to. Now that we're preheated, into the oven for 15 minutes before I rotate it for another 15 minutes. A quick rotate to make sure it cooks evenly. And then I set the timer for another 15 minutes, and then it'll be done. Time for the awesome reveal. Doesn't that look good? But like I said, a little bit too much cinnamon and sugar, which you can really see on the bottom. Rolling it back over so it can cool. And I let it cool to room temperature before I cut it up. And you can see how the cinnamon sugar was sticking to the cutting board. Nice and crusty. The first piece is a little less than impressive, but they do get better, and I still think I can make French toast out of this, and I think it's going to come out awesome. As you can see, it's just a little bit crumbly, but I really still think I can be careful with the spatula and still make some awesome French toast. And here's a couple pieces of the results. No, they're not perfect, but I'm not going to complain because it's the first time I've ever made cinnamon bread, and it still came out pretty darn awesome. Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you will know when we upload a new video. If you think this content would be interesting to a friend, please share. If you have a question or a comment, leave it in the comment section. And once again, thanks for watching, and may you have an awesome and healthier and lighter day.